fantastical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL Network.
Yes, that's right. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of our Monday Night Roundtables, here to wrap up the January shows of Saturday Night Live from season 47. My name is Jon Schneider from the SNL Network. So happy to be here to talk about everything that we just saw from the Willem Dafoe and Katy Perry episode of Saturday Night Live. We had a really fun and fiery hot take show on Saturday night. So in case you missed that, pause the podcast, go back, check out that one because that one is really great. And then come back here because we're going to break down the sketches in more details than you can imagine here on the Roundtable tonight with an excellent, excellent panel. So joining us first is my man, Bill Kenney. Bill, how are you?
Great, John. How are you? Feeling pretty good other than the below zero temperatures that we're enduring here, but ready to talk penis.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, for sure. Aren't we all, Bill? So yes, first of all, I know big snowstorm around the East Coast. Hope everybody's doing okay. It's very cold, but like I said, wrapping up January, headed towards February. So spring potentially on the horizon. Groundhog's Day coming up. So we're gonna hit some milestones as we head towards the spring and summer months coming up. And joining us, I always love to talk Saturday Night Live with her, one of the hosts of Hollywood Dish. It is Rebecca North. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm good. I actually love the snow, and I'm kind of upset we're not getting any here on the West Coast right now, but hoping everyone's staying safe because I like 2 inches rather than 16, and that's a dick comment.
Oh, it was, yeah. set it up. I was going for it, but yes, got it. Good to know, Rebecca. All right, and joining us once again for the first time in a while, and I'm so thrilled every time I get to talk SNL with this guy. It is Rob Finn. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing good, John. I'm also part of the Northeast Corridor snowstorm. Started a new job today. A lot of big things happening in the world over here. So happy to jump in and talk about Willem Dafoe and his crazy, crazy face.
Okay, no dick jokes to start off the show for you, Rob, just from Bill and Rebecca.
Clean PG humor right here.
Okay, yeah, when you said P, I wasn't sure where you were going with that. Okay, all right, let's get into the show. Let's talk about everything that we saw from Saturday night. And we always like to start off our show by breaking down, why did SNL go with, this particular host for this time? And I think the answer is clear that, Willem Dafoe is somebody that the SNL community has been asking for a very long time. So, Bill, what's your experience with Willem Dafoe? And were you happy to see that SNL chose him to host?
I was so happy to see him host. We can forgive yet another MCU host on the year of that. But this is one of those guys kind of in a different vein of Owen Wilson, where it's like, how did he never host before? I've been familiar with him since all the way back to, he mentioned it in his monologue, Platoon and Last Temptation of Christ. So he's been around a long, long time. And the fact that he never had this opportunity like a Walken or Malkovich is criminal. And we fixed that this week.
For sure. Yeah. And there are a, select number of people who have never hosted the show for decades that people have been talking about. When are they going to host the show? And I would say that Willem Dafoe was definitely at the top of that list, going back to the time even when he was originally in Spider-Man in the early 2000s. And we had some fun with when James Franco hosted back in the day, and Bill Hader did a very great sketch with him. So playing Willem Dafoe. So there is some history with Willem Dafoe impressions on Saturday Live. But Rebecca, what about you? Were you excited to see Willem Dafoe host the show?
Well, I actually just was not super familiar with his work. Obviously, that's a face you recognize and a name you recognize. And even just like the impressions on the show and just hearing about him in the world and culture. But I personally have never consumed any Willem Dafoe content. So I was just excited to see what he would bring and kind of introduce myself to him.
For sure. Yeah. And Rob, what about you? Are you a Marvel guy? Were you familiar with Willem Dafoe, and were you excited to see him on the show?
Very familiar with him as the Green Goblin, as well as there's so much. I was racking my brain to think of something else that he has been in more recently. The most recent thing I saw him in was The Lighthouse, which is a movie he did with, I think, Robert Pattinson, which is just kind of bizarre, artsy. So not someone who I had been thinking of as a perfect host, but I think as soon as it was announced, I was like, I would love to see what this guy is going to do on the show. And again, I know, like Bill had said, I just sort of assumed he'd already hosted. He's someone who has been, he's he's been around for like 4 decades or something. He said he started when he was 21. It just seemed like he already had. I don't know, John, if he has he ever popped up at any point? Just like a quick cameo anywhere? You'd be the guy to know.
Well,
last week, right?
Yeah.
That would be the
Oh,
only thing,
that's right. Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yep.
So, I mean, that leads me into my next question for you, Bill, which was like, we did see him last week during the Will Forte episode. And do you think that increased the hype and the excitement for him coming on? Or, like, how do you feel about, seeing the host the week before we had to see him on the show this week?
It really doesn't do anything for me either way. I mean, we've seen that across the history of SNL. I mean, famously, Jerry Seinfeld did it during the 25th anniversary, and Dakota Fanning, or not Dakota Fanning, Dakota Johnson, excuse me, at the 40th. So, I mean, it's okay. It really doesn't do a whole lot for me unless it's somebody that I was already super hyped to see. So, I mean, if Will Forte had shown up during the Ariana DeBose episode, I might have been a little more excited. But yeah, either way, I'm good.
Okay, for sure. Rebecca, so one of the questions I also had, prior to us getting into the episode really is, how do you feel in general about, the older male host coming in? We've had like a history of, people that is mentioned, like Christopher Walken is a great example that people compare Willem Dafoe to, but do you typically enjoy those episodes where we have somebody of this archetype come in?
I do, honestly, because you see that, and then you see the Ariana DeBose. I always make her name sound different.
Yeah.
DeBose episode where it was someone newer, young into the scene, and they kind of are a little more reserved because she's not as well established and doesn't want to make such crazy. They don't want to put her in a position where these internet videos are following her for the rest of her life. And I think Willem Dafoe had nothing to lose. And it showed in the episode. And I think that it is exciting. I'm happy that not every episode's like that, because obviously I'm all game for giving people their chance to shine. But having someone so established he doesn't care what comes out about him on the show or the episode. He's not worried about an internet trail following the rest of his career. So it is usually really fun when they do have someone that's just kind of there to play and just hang out, not to be the biggest part of their career,
For sure. And Rob, I mean, you have to think that, him being there for the Will Forte episode and then getting to see how the show works for an entire week led to potentially some of the success we saw this week because he was so game for anything.
Yeah, I wonder if that would, it's probably impossible to do with the schedules that happen because these people are so typically in demand and at the height of their fame. You can't say, hey, set aside 2 weeks to come in, watch the show from behind the scenes, not actually do anything, then host after that. But I got to imagine he picked up some things, and you got to imagine Will Forte probably pulled him aside and was like, hey, Willem, I'm going to tell you what it's going to be like to host the show. And the idea of that, I love.
Or Peyton Manning potentially could have.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sure. Man, he was terrific. But yeah, it's an interesting. I haven't seen it, and maybe it's just because I haven't been paying enough attention. But they still doing the leaving notes for the subsequent host.
So I haven't.
Remember that?
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Me neither.
I know that was definitely going into last year, but I haven't seen that this year. But for sure, I definitely resonate with what you're saying, that I think that, getting some guidance would be great. I think in an ideal world that all hosts would do this. At Bill, they must have that option, right? All hosts must have the option that, you can come in earlier, check out the show, and learn the process of Saturday Night Live.
Right.
Oh, I would definitely think that was given to them as a choice. Obviously, as Rob said, I mean, there's people out in LA or across the ponds that can't get there, especially earlier in the week, where it might be more beneficial, not necessarily seeing the Saturday show go live, but see the writing process, see how they come up with the ideas and things like that. So, I mean, I think Willem said in his monologue that he was in New York now again, but so that probably was beneficial as far as having him right there.
For sure. Okay. Any other, initial thoughts on Willem Dafoe before we jump into the episode?
No, but I do have a thought on Katy Perry being chosen as the musical guest.
Of course. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Obviously, Katy Perry is a very well-known name, and I feel like it's kind of taken a step back from being so much in the light, like hosting American Idol, and a little more laid back. And she actually has American been. Idol. Yeah. Judging, not hosting, being there and taking kind of a step back. And then as of recent, she has her residency, and the set is pretty absurd. And you go on TikTok, and I mean, I don't know if this was their plan, but it's succeeding to kind of bring her back into the mainstream by being kooky and funny. So I was really excited to see what she was going to bring because I've been seeing clips of her residency on TikTok, and I'm like, this is absurd. And I'm curious, like, to what extent she's going to bring that to SNL this weekend. So I was hyped about that musical choice because I honestly don't really care about Katy Perry that much, but I thought it was exciting. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I ever got to talk about this on the podcast, but I'm actually like a really big American Idol fan. I've really I fell off for like a little bit in the like later Fox years, but I'm a really big fan, and I started to jump on board when they had Lionel Richie, Katy Perry, and Luke Bryan rejoin the show, and I didn't realize how funny Katy Perry is. Like I saw her on SNL when she hosted. She's obviously been a 4-time musical guest. Everybody knows that Bronx Beat sketch, but I was pretty surprised that we actually didn't see Katy Perry in any sketches this week. Bill, any thoughts on that? Would you have liked to have seen Katy Perry in any of those sketches?
Oh, absolutely. And I may not be a Swiftie, but I'm kind of a Katy cat. So, you know, I've loved Katy since she started. And I mean, her hosting gig in 2010 was one of my favorite episodes of that era. So, yeah, I definitely would have loved to have seen. I mean, that was floating all over TikTok and social media this week with her Elmo shirt. And the reason she was wearing that in Bronx Beat, because she had just been kicked off of Sesame Street for showing too much cleavage. And this episode was immediately following that. So it was such a nice pop culture moment at the time. Would have loved to see her take on some of the pop culture, even having her in the cold open. I know that's kind of rare, but it would have been fun to see her in something.
Yeah, but I do think having Peyton Manning come also kind of took back from her, because how many people were they going to have come? And I know last episode 2 was a lot of not like repeat SNL like cast members in it. So I think it would have been too much if they did that.
Yeah, for sure. And I see Nicole in the chat talking about me liking American Idol now. Hey, I was around at the beginning too. I was around for the Clay versus Ruben stuff, so I remember all that. Rob, any thoughts on Katy Perry at the show?
Yeah, I was just really surprised to not see her in anything. I got to wonder if from like a publicity standpoint, if she's trying to shy away from that. But as I say it out loud, I don't think that it would hurt her Las Vegas residency for her to pop up in a sketch or anything like that. So she seemed, obviously she's hosted before, so of any musical guest, I would have expected her to be the most game. So I don't know what it was that made her not go, but would have been nice to see her in something, I'm sure.
For sure. And I was trying to think what sketch Katy Perry could potentially have been in. And I think that the easiest shoe-in obviously would have been the tenant meeting sketch. I feel like just, once you're like doing the cavalcade of all the people coming out, you might as well have Katy Perry do some type of character. Would have been great to see the girl from Bronx Beat back into the tenant meeting. That would have been a great callback for a longtime SNL fans, but wasn't to be for this one. Okay, so let's get into the episode and what we saw on Saturday night. And we always start off with our cold open. So this time we had a cold open called Russian Disinformation. And basically what's been happening with the cold opens recently is we're bouncing back and forth every week between James Austin Johnson's Biden and James Austin Johnson's Trump. And we're really, which one are we going to do this week? Okay, we did the Trump last week, we're going to do the Biden this week. And obviously no one is criticizing the impressions, but I have to start to feel that there is, they're trying to figure out what can we do differently with these impressions and in these sketches now for the cold opens. And it didn't play so well in our conversations on Saturday. So Bill, let me ask you, what were your thoughts on the cold open we saw?
Boy, I was hoping on a rewatch I would have liked it a little bit more, but it was a sloppy mess. I mean, you could have lopped off the first 3.5 minutes and it wouldn't have lost anything that was funny. I'm not a fan of doing memes and headlines as a joke, especially in a cold open. That should be your time to shine the performers, shine a light on the performers. And that part didn't work for me. It started getting better when we brought in Pete as Aaron Rodgers and having Chris as the State Farm guy. And obviously Chloe did a great job as Michaela, spelled the worst way. But yeah, again, the Biden impression, as I said a few weeks ago, is fantastic. And I would watch him do anything. But he didn't have a lot to do. And he had one good line about, giving up his New Year's resolution to say malarkey. And that was it. I mean, he was kind of just sitting there. He didn't really have a whole lot to do. So, yeah, this was a no for me.
For sure.
Malarkey.
But Bill, I want to ask you before I head on to the other panelists. I was thinking about this recently, and I was like, hey, I watched so many episodes in a row of Daryl Hammond doing Clinton, and I watched so many episodes in a row of Dana Carvey doing H.W. Bush. And I don't know, maybe it's because it was on a rewatch and I wasn't around at the time, fully, that I just, it kind of all like blends together and doesn't feel tiresome in a way. But why do political impressions feel so tired now week to week compared to maybe in other eras of the show?
I think because of the heightened politicalness of everything. Back then it was almost a charming impression. You were making fun of Bush, but you weren't hating on him. And I don't think they're doing that with Biden at this point, or even with the Trump impression. But I feel like the way we're divided, and I think that's kind of brought into, so if you don't like Biden and you see him in another cold open, you're not going to like what they're doing. If you hate Trump or you're over all the Baldwin stuff, you're not going to want to see Trump again. So I think that's kind of been brought into it. And it's a shame because, like you said, I mean, that was a staple in the 80s and the 90s that you would see the president in the cold open, and it was almost always funny.
Right. Yeah, I think I definitely agree. I think that's a major factor. I just wonder if, like, we take out the audience perception of it, why. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I want to continue to explore this for sure. Rebecca, let me get your opinion on the cold open, and if you want to jump in on that conversation as well.
Yeah, so I wasn't mad about it. Contrary to all of you guys in the chat right now, I might be second guessing what I was thinking, but I kind of had an eye roll when it opens and we see that it's another political with a Biden impression. I'm like, oh, okay. And I kind of like that it was messy, and I like that it was so stupid. Like, it was easy. I mean, I'm an easy target. I pretty much can laugh at anything. And I thought it was funny. I mean, I genuinely laughed throughout it. And I think the cold opens this season have been kind of flatlining anyway. So changing it up than like a more serious political thing and just kind of shining a little bit of light, like stupid humor onto a really serious situation. I always like when they do that. I don't know. I was entertained. So, and they had a bunch of good one-liners. Like, I'm not going to say the whole thing was brilliant, but even just like reading the chat here, people are writing that like their favorite line, and there were a lot of good lines. So I wasn't really upset at it. It wasn't my favorite sketch of the night. No. But
yeah, for sure. And I agree with you, by the way. I actually like this cold open more than other cold opens this season. And
Yeah.
I felt like there was more cohesiveness between all the parts here. And some of them were actually very funny. I just wonder why the repetitiveness of the themes of the cold open work in other eras versus now. Rob, let me get your 2 cents on the cold open and our discussion.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because of like just my age as I'm watching it. I think when I was younger watching, Will Ferrell do George W. Bush or whatever, it was just like this crazy satire that I didn't see anywhere else. Whereas now it's a lot harder to parody something that's already so ridiculous. And to me, because of that, it feels a lot more tired than it feels. This James JAJ doing Biden feels less tired than Baldwin doing Trump. But
for sure. Yeah,
it's still, every time I'm just like, all right, I get it. I watched the news this week. It was sad enough. I don't want to be reminded of it. And I think maybe part of it also is now that there's so much political satire everywhere, whereas it was more, and I could be speaking out of turn. I don't think it was as common in like the late 90s, early 2000s. There wasn't yet, a million political like satire shows with The Daily Show and the Colbert Report at the time. But now it just feels like I'm getting that from everywhere, even like on Twitter, and just like constant, everyone dunking on this politician left and right. It's just constantly happening. So I think there was a bit of uniqueness to it that isn't there as much anymore. So I don't get as much out of it as I maybe used to, but that's just me.
For sure. And I agree with everything you're saying. I do wonder if, because I think that JJ's Biden is, we were talking all season, is so excellent and really one of the best political impressions we've had in a decade on the show. But I do wonder if it would be less tired because people are not rolling their eyes seeing JJ as Biden. It's more the situation that develops around him. I wonder if we could potentially take the JJ Biden character and remove him from the classic political things that you would see in a cold open. So having JJ as Biden in the Oval Office is something that is expected on SNL. You've seen it, whatever. Having him, at a press conference, all that stuff. But I wonder if we can take the JJ's Biden character and have him in other areas. Can he be walking down the street? Can he be going somewhere? Can he be there some fundraiser that he's attending? I think once you start removing and changing the environment of these characters, I think we start opening up the game a little bit more as to what could be interesting in these cold opens.
And I'm sorry, go ahead. Don't forget that, that was Hammond did that with Clinton quite a bit on Weekend Update. He was doing movie reviews on there. It wasn't always the cold open. So, you could put him in that situation, put him on Weekend Update as a correspondent for whatever. You could have done an in and out with him. That would have been an interesting concept. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Putting him in other situations where it's not just these cold opens that drag on for 7-8 minutes. Yeah.
Rob, did you want to jump in as well?
I agree fully. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think of like a scenario, like almost if they were to just throw the Biden character into one of the sketches that was there that played have Biden in the tenants meeting. That would be so much more enjoyable to me than having him sit in the Oval Office again and, make these kind of like outdated Instagram Gen Z jokes. I don't know. It's just, I never get excited when they come on screen, but I don't know. That makes me sound a little bit jaded. So,
well, no, I get that, and I think that I always go back to the classic Phil Hartman as Bill Clinton going to McDonald's, like a very famous sketch, and I think about that situation, and that is something that I just wonder if they could pull off in this era. And I think that one of the things that we've been missing so far in season 47 that we don't talk about a lot is we've had no Maya Rudolph come in as the vice president. And I think that to get the opportunity to see Maya Rudolph play with James Austin Johnson potentially is something that could be very new and exciting for us to talk about. So I hope that they're able to pull that off in the back nine. For whatever reason, maybe Maya couldn't get there. But I think that having Kamala and President Biden together would be something that is new and fresh for the show. Okay. Anyone else got anything on the cold open they want to talk about? All right, so let's get into the sketches that we want to talk about from the Willem Dafoe and Katy Perry episode. And Bill, I will start with you. Is there a sketch that you would like to bring up?
Yeah, all this talk about 80s and 90s SNL, it's kind of going to be reminiscent of that. I want to talk about the nugenix ad. The way we watch things has obviously changed over the last 20 years, but the staple of SNL pre-tapes up until the early 2000s was commercial parodies. And we don't really get that anymore. We get the Target or the Peloton, but they're not spot on. They're not beat for beat. And this was, and I mentioned it in the chat on Saturday. This is something that if you watch any kind of sports channel, these nugenix commercials are running constantly. Every time they go to commercial or every time there's a timeout, you have to sit through, hey, it's Frank Thomas. I'm so excited to meet you. And he starts talking about these pills. And every beat of that was exactly as the actual commercial until they got to, and you can't stay hard anymore. But yeah, I love that they went completely in on this, made it exactly what we know, so it's relatable to at least a certain part of the audience. And there was a lot of good jokes in it too. And bringing Willem Dafoe in, this was one of his better performances of the night. Doug Flutie, which we haven't seen on SNL since season 10. That's crazy.
This was crazy. This was Bill. This is an insane stat. I had no idea. I was like, hey, did Doug Flutie ever get played on SNL? No, not by Anthony Michael Hall, not by Brad Hall, by Rich Hall.
By Rich Hall. And it is an actually really funny sketch that he was in. It was right after his famous college game where he hit the Hail Mary, and Eddie Murphy was hosting, and Eddie Murphy was playing Bishop Tutu, and he burned the Heisman by mistake. And Flutie was just completely taken out of his element, and he was very upset. And he's like, I'm going to end up being in beer commercials after this. And I'm like, oh my God, like, did they know what they were doing after 37 years? You're putting him, it wasn't a beer commercial, but it was a boner commercial. And I thought that was great symmetry for a show that only a show that's been on 50 years can do that. But yeah, this was one of my favorites of the night for sure.
Bill, I was going to ask if this spoke to you and was more relatable because you are over 30.
Well, I'm over 40, and no, it is not relatable, sir. No, not at all. And if I saw Frank Thomas, I would be excited. And as soon as he started talking about this, I would have the same reaction as Mikey Day did.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so you would be like,
oh, so now you're interested.
That's right.
For sure. Rebecca, thoughts on the nugenix pre-tape that we saw?
Well, I don't think I was the target audience for this at all, because, oh yeah, I know. I'm literally like sitting here with my Google up, like Doug Flutie, Frank Thomas, like Willem Dafoe. I might as well be searching him up too, because I don't really know who any of these people are. And you didn't need to know who any of these people were at all. Like, I was laughing so much at it. I thought it was hysterical. And I for sure just wasn't the target audience. But I didn't realize this like stuff actually gets played. Like, these types of commercials get played on TV. So I thought it was more of just like a complete parody and taking like an obscure thought and just creating it. But I actually think it's even funnier now that this shit actually comes up on TV. And like, I didn't know this at all. But again, I don't know who Frank Thomas, Doug Flutie, or I barely knew who Willem Dafoe was before this. And it still was really funny. So definitely a highlight of the night.
Yeah, I just think that the commercial itself was like, okay, classic, like Mikey Day being confused by the situation. But there was a part of this commercial, Rob, that was by far the best part of this, which was, I assume, Bill, not in the actual commercial, but where Willem Dafoe comes in and turns this to this whole weird British thing, and Sir Willem Dafoe. And then it was very bizarre.
For 2 seconds, I was like, wait, is he British? Is it Sir Willem Dafoe? Is he actually British? And then I was just like, no, that's the joke. They're making a joke about that. No, completely. I think what is the entire commercial itself is to prove how, I guess, universal it is that it's funny whether or not you knew who Frank Thomas and Doug Flutie were, or you had no idea who they were. And it was still funny because it's just like, oh, they're old athletes and they're, trying to get this guy to admit that he can't get hard anymore. It's going to be funny no matter who it is that is making them do that. And that's, I think, telling that it can hit the nerve of people, whether they know who the athletes that they're parodying are or not. I have yet to do it, but after I saw that, I want to go find an actual nugenix commercial and go back and watch it. So put it in the chat or something if anyone knows a good one.
Yeah, I also think this was a sketch that was more for a target audience, but everyone could enjoy, as opposed to the cold open, which was more for a target audience that not even everyone in that target audience enjoyed. So I think having two niche sketches it's a little risky, but at the same time, like, this one paid off so well.
Yeah, and I think that actually, in a way, what made this work differently than, like Bill brought up, like a Target or Peloton thing, was that, like, yeah, maybe a lot of people knew the commercial, but I don't know how many of our listening audience, and I wouldn't know, but maybe how many of them actually use or know nugenix. So for them, it was like, oh, okay, this is they were learning about the product at the same time. Obviously doesn't do exactly what SNL told us to, but I think there was a factor here where you didn't have preconceived notions of the sketch prior, because what Target is, what Peloton bikes are. And I think there was an element to the sketch that made it more interesting, with the fact that you don't actually know what nugenix does exactly. So there's potential room here to play with that part of the sketch. So I think that that's what worked for this one, and definitely my favorite from the first half of the episode. But I will just say one last thing. I mean, Willem Dafoe at the end of this.
Your perfume smells lovely, milady.
Oh, so great. So great to get him into that role. And, it really warms me up for what we're going to see later on in the evening. So very fun talk about nugenix. Really enjoyed this one. Okay. Rebecca, is there a sketch or moment of the night that you want to talk about?
Just the weekend update in general this week. I watched it back, like, right after I finished the episode, just because I was like, it was like extra funny this week, in my opinion. Even the in-between bits, like the Lori Loughlin joke and just Che wearing the cat eye glasses. And it was just really funny all around, the whole thing. But I think both of the Weekend Update guests, one being Adie and Bowen playing trend predictors, which like you see, it was so relevant. I was just watching like a YouTube video of people saying like what's in or out, kind of making fun of that also. And they just hit the nail on the head. And that's just like quintessential Bowen Yang, just going up there and talking, and just, it was so stupid. And Adie could not keep like that like laughter off her face. And it didn't even make sense to popular trends nowadays anyway. But as I'm like sitting here with my fidget spinner, but I literally think, I don't know, I thought that was great. And then Peyton Manning's cameo just put the icing on the cake, because I watched SNL the next day, so I saw that Peyton Manning was on it, but I didn't know what he was doing on the episode. And him going on a whole segment about Emily in Paris, which I've watched, the show sucks. And it just making such a funny joke. And again, just kind of incorporating everyone into it. Like I would typically not really be interested in Peyton Manning speaking, but then him talking about Emily in Paris, a show that I didn't even like still, like, I don't know. The whole Weekend Update was just such a big hit for me.
For sure. Yeah, so two really different parts of Weekend Update, but two very fun parts. I mean, I really felt like Adie Bryant, I did not appreciate on Saturday night how extra she was going with this. Just the lines that we were getting from her with this one.
Go to bed, bitch.
And then this.
Get in your bed that's also a jail.
And then
these quiet legends need to speak up.
It was so good.
I was so impressed. I really, on Saturday, I just, between her and Bowen, and not to take away everything from Bowen, but just really, this was just very, very, just like intense to me. So just starting with this, Rob, what were your thoughts on what we saw from Bowen and Adie?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's one of those times where before this, like they even start in with the bit that they're doing, just them alone coming out in the way that they're dressed, just like sliding next to the two guys dressed in suits, just completely dead serious with, I don't even know how to describe what it was that they're wearing. I was like, I am all in on whatever they're about to do. And they did not disappoint. It's everything that comes out of Adie Bryant's mouth is fun. And the two of them together just screaming. I hope it becomes a recurring segment. I loved it. I thought it was hysterical. And ironically, Peyton Manning has now made me want to watch Emily in Paris just so I can appreciate his jokes even more. I want to go back and I haven't seen any of the show. I want to watch all of it and then just be like, wow, really good joke about Gabriel there, Peyton. Way to go. I want to bring it home.
The best line being, wait, there's a season 1.
Yeah.
Like, it's so good.
Such a great line. Yeah, Bill, just starting with the Adie and Bowen stuff. I mean, I was like getting some goth talk vibes as soon as I saw them, but then realized that that was not where we were going with this. And I enjoyed what we got to see from them a lot more on the rewatch.
Oh, definitely. I had to watch this a second and third time to really appreciate it. But do you have the shiny shoe soundbite or no?
I don't. No. I don't.
Oh, okay. Yeah, shiny shoe, go back to hell was one of my favorite lines, especially on rewatch. Yeah, I mean, Adie trying not to break the entire time was great. And then Che getting involved. I mean, he almost never gets involved with his commentators. So that was great having him wear the cat's eye glasses and have the fidget spinner. But yeah, I mean, and also Peyton, oh, my God, what a talent. And the fact that he's only hosted once. I was saying earlier offline that, I mean, I'd like to see a Barkley-like trajectory. Charles Barkley, who went 17 years between appearances and came back and ended up hosting 3 more times in the 2010s. Love to see that from Peyton because he's got so much energy and so much fun stuff to bring to an entire show. So I'd love to see that.
For sure. And I would say, like, there's been, in the community, a lot of people have been passing around this quote that Peyton said from years ago, where he said he didn't want to ruin the legacy of the first time that he's hosted. And I think if anybody was going to, be right in terms of how that episode was viewed, I mean, rave reviews for that episode just by everybody, all ages in the community. But you are so right, Bill. I cannot think of a bigger tragedy that in terms of like, people who are still around that, never got to host again. I just don't know if it was his choice really, or it was SNL or SNL just basically never called him. But for whatever reason, I mean, this got to show you how amazing Peyton Manning is. I genuinely believe if you look back at the almost 300 cast members in the history of Saturday Night Live, Peyton Manning has better comedic timing than more than half of them, probably. It was very crazy. And I mean, we asked our audience, we wanted to know this week, we wanted to know, okay, should Peyton Manning come back to host? Like, what do people think? And we asked on Twitter, we asked on Instagram, and very overwhelming reviews that said, like really good stuff. Do you want to see Peyton Manning host for SNL for a second time? About 75% of our audience said, yes, we would like to see Peyton Manning host for a second time. About 25% said no. So for me, it seems to me like he would make a great host. And I have to think that the SNL is hearing everybody call for it at this point. Rebecca, would you like to see Peyton Manning come back and host?
Yeah, I thought even in that like 2-3 minutes that he was on the show, I mean, that was a good like trailer and teaser for him to host.
For sure. Rob, what about you?
100%. I would love for him to come back. And after Tom Brady retired this past week, I need some good football news in my life. And Tom Brady was nowhere near, as much as I hate to admit it, being from Massachusetts, nowhere near the comedic talent of Peyton Manning. It's unfair. He can't be that good at two different things. I think he'd be. And now that people are calling for it, I bet that he'll have the confidence to be like, all right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to give this another shot. So fingers crossed. I bet he'll be back.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, did Tom Brady retire? Like, I know the news has been out there, but he denied it, right? So like, or people in his team denied it. So what's the deal, Bill?
I mean, they're going back and forth, right? I mean, he said that he spoke to somebody at the Bucs that day, and he did not say it, but he hasn't outright denied it either. So probably liking all the adulation he's getting, and is just going to stay retired. Okay.
I vote that on February 26th, we get Tom Brady on Weekend Updates to let us know if he's coming back or not. That would be good. So just honestly, just great time for Peyton Manning. Really loved this line.
Ooh la la, more like, oh no, you didn't, girl.
just so great from Peyton. So Weekend Update has been really strong. For whatever you thought of the January run of shows, Weekend Update's been pretty good the last few weeks. So I've been enjoying what we got to see. Rob, let's head over to you to give us a sketch that you want to talk about.
I feel like if I were to come on this every week, I would always pick the Please Don't Destroy sketch because I just love what they do every single week. I truly don't think that there's been one that I haven't at least kind of enjoyed. But this one in particular, I want to know where they found this kid. Where do they find this like comedic genius 10-year-old who just comes in and blows everybody away? I just absolutely loved it. Obviously, it was only like a minute and 15 seconds long, like most of their stuff is. So not a ton to cover, but I just loved it. I thought when he's given the Heimlich maneuver to John and Hero by Nickelback starts playing, just so many tiny little things that they like, choices that they make are always just so perfect. I can't get enough of these guys. Everything they do, I think is hysterical.
For sure. And I will say about the kid, Patrick Scott McDermott, you can find him on Instagram at Patrick Scott McDermott. Good kid.
Nice.
I actually DM'd with him. I DM'd with him a little bit last night.
No way.
Great job on the sketch, and really just he was just so excited to be there. I could tell that he's a child actor, and a lot of support for everything he did, and it was really just one of the stars of the show, in my opinion. Just so talented, and maybe potentially on Saturday Night Live one day. That would be really cool to get him back on the show years later, like Bill, similar to how we got Kirsten Dunst once in a cold open, and then she ended up hosting eventually. So what were your thoughts on Please Don't Destroy, the pre-tape we got?
And don't forget Kieran Culkin too.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, so did you go drinking Hennessy in the club with him, or was it just?
I did. Yes, I did. Yeah. That was what happened.
This was fantastic. I echo everything Rob says. I mean, I have not been at all disappointed in these guys at all. I don't even agree with the kind of trope that's going out now that they should leave their office. I mean, Three Sad Virgins was great, but I think they're doing a lot of good work, and we don't want them to get too big. Don't want them to get too Lonely Island quite yet. Let them stay in the office. Keep it simple for now, maybe for a year or two, and then see where it goes from there. But yeah, this was another hit from them, and the fact that they keep getting cut every week is really, really frustrating. So keep them coming, guys.
Can I push back on that? Why don't you want them to get too big? You feel like it's too soon?
Not big as far as popularity. I don't want their sandbox to grow. So I'd like to see them stay in the office or somewhere on the premises. I don't want to see them, wandering the planet at this point. I think they're doing a lot of stuff great in these small spaces like their office. And I think with Lonely Island, when they started off and we were just seeing them outside of 30 Rock and things like that, that was a lot of fun. And you almost kind of miss those days of Lonely Island. Until they got too big, and it was fireworks and it was special musical guests and things like that.
Yeah,
you don't agree?
Yeah, that's a good point. Rob, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if the sketches that they did before joining SNL were also almost all exclusively like them in their apartment. It wasn't like big production. It wasn't like long sketches or anything like that. So I think that they really gel in that type of environment where they're just like, it's very limited. They have to figure out what it is that they're going to do that's funny in a room. They did, like you said, they did the one music video with Pete. But other than that, I think that I also hope that in the same way, but I also want to see them do different stuff. So part of me wants them to continue and stay in the office, because clearly they've made so much out of just being in, those four walls and being them as the writers, as themselves. But I'm excited to see what they could do beyond that too.
Yeah, I'm definitely struggling with this in my mind because I definitely enjoy a little bit of I think someone in the chat said a palate cleanser. I think at one point of them, I think it was Ken. Yeah, I said a palate cleanser for them coming in and changing the pace of the show a little bit, where they're isolated to the office and we see these three people who aren't on the rest of the show, but. Three Sad Virgins to me was one of the best things that happened on the show this season. And I think it transcends the show, right? Because you had Taylor in it, you had Pete Davidson in it. And, that obviously raised these Please Don't Destroy guys to a new level of stardom, to the point where we saw them on the Pete and Miley New Year special. And I think that, they grew from this. So I can't necessarily blame them for wanting to go in that direction every now and then, but maybe there's a delicate balance here. So Rebecca, let me get your thoughts on what we saw from Please Don't Destroy.
Yeah, I don't physically care where they are. I think keeping their content short, they've mastered short form content, and the fact that this sketch was one of the top that we're talking about right now, and it was only a couple minutes long, if even that, and they did have their rise to fame on social media and TikTok. Like, I've been watching them for as long as I've had a TikTok, and they're so good with that. And I do worry. I do know three Sad Versions, or whatever that was longer, and it was still funny. But I think if every single week their content was really long and had kind of the Keenan Chris Red music video aspect, where it's like, oh, this again, and it's longer, and then you kind of, I think keeping it short is where it is. Doesn't matter if they're on a boat or in an office or in Africa. Like, it doesn't, I don't think it matters to me where they are. I just want them to keep it short, concise, so then their jokes don't run on for too long.
Yeah. I just think that there was a magic, and this is something that I've said before about the Lonely Island, and it's really hard not to make comparisons, but I really felt like there was a magic with the Lonely Island, that every single week when an SNL digital short popped up on screen, you had this anticipation, like a Christmas show or like a finale of a season, that anything could happen. That these guys could be walking down the street and all of a sudden Akon's going to come out of the alley and they're going to sing about something crazy. And I'm not saying that that's the direction I necessarily need Please Don't Destroy to go in, but when a Please Don't Destroy video pops up, I want to feel that anticipation of like, oh my God, what are they going to do this week? So I hope they find that thing that gets me to that point, because I'm enjoying what I'm seeing from them. But my hope is that they take that next level coming up as we move into seasons, 2, 3, 4 with them. Okay. The sketch that I want to talk about is A Beauty and the Beast. And I am one of those people that I really, when I see Disney movie sketches or, certain parodies of old movies or TV shows on the rundown, I'm like, I don't think this is going to be great because I just never find these memorable. I never find that they do anything that subverts my expectations. But I was very pleasantly surprised. Got a lot of pleasure from this one. And I just really I could not believe the direction that they were heading with this. I just felt that the raunchiness was so great because we all knew what was going to happen. I mean, we kept watching that it was going to get crazier and crazier, but the fact that Willem Dafoe was so game for it made this so much fun. So this worked really well with him. And I have to say, this is definitely one of my favorite sketches of the season. So Bill, thoughts on Beauty and the Beast?
Same. I mean, if I see Beauty and the Beast or Annie or anything else like that on the rundown, I just groan instantaneously. And then when it's the obvious masturbation joke right from the start, like, oh Christ, but tell me the host doesn't matter who else could pull this off? Maybe this season, Will Forte, but who else could have done what Willem Dafoe did? I mean, he gave a masterclass in being by himself in most of this. And my favorite part was him turning on the music and dancing around the room. I mean, that was classic comedy right there with very few words. It was a hell of a lot better than I ever could have imagined. If you had a gun to my head, I would have said there's no way that's going to be good. So, yeah,
for sure.
Well done.
Really well done. And my only criticism really is I just didn't feel that the sketch needed Kyle and Punky and all the people that came in. Like, I felt like we could have stuck with Pete and Chloe and had their interactions about this, and Pete's, and Chloe being, mortified at what she was seeing. Rebecca, let me get your thoughts on Beauty and the Beast.
I thought the second Pete Davidson showed up on my screen dressed as the Beast, I was like, this is going to be good. And I mean, Willem Dafoe, he went all in on that. And this is like the extent of the content I know about him. And I think he's hysterical. Like, the fact that they did something that would be so obvious, you would think, the second he's in a room alone. But it just kept building and building and building and then just ended. And at first, on first watch, I was like a little annoyed at the ending. I was like, wait, this is it. And then the second time I appreciated it more because it didn't need anything more at the end. And I thought this was like going to be a standout sketch of the season, like you said.
For sure. Rob, are you ready for me? I'm going to play you the lines that I really felt like we have to talk about, and then I'll get your thoughts on it. Okay.
Bring it on.
This one where he's looking at the picture of the horse.
Look at me.
Just the passion at this. And then obviously this is a long one, but it's worth it.
Stomping on my groin, spanking my ass, biting my ass. So many wonderful things with my ass.
You could not have said those lines more perfectly. So Rob, thoughts on what we saw from Beauty and the Beast?
Yeah, I forget. He talked about it in the cold open, what his training was as an actor, but he was using every ounce of acting skill he had to commit to this incredibly silly, the father of Beauty and the Beast. Is it Belle? Is that it? Belle? Yeah, Belle's masturbating alone in a room. He's just going all in for it. It also seemed like I felt like some of the other sketches he was a little bit stilted reading off of the cue cards. And it felt like for this one, maybe because he was committing so much, it felt like he'd memorized everything and just didn't even need to look at the cue cards. Like when he was doing his crazy dance moves and looking away, and obviously not into the camera, looking at the cue cards. I think that he was the most game for this one, and that showed up. And for that reason, something that easily could have been stupid and forgettable was still stupid, but not forgettable.
And I think a GIF that will live on in infamy is Willem Dafoe slapping his ass. And I just think that probably GIF of the season. I can't think of anything else. Maybe Pete Davidson kissing Kim Kardashian will be up there, but have to think that this was just an all-timer for stuff like that. So anyone else with anything on Beauty and the Beast they want to bring up? Okay. All right, Bill, is there anything else from the episode that you want to make sure we talk about?
I did enjoy tenant meeting. I know these can get a little tiresome as well, just the parade of nonsense. And I often wonder what the cast members think. Listen, we're gonna, have you in all this time and dress and makeup, and you're gonna say one word or you're gonna say one line. And I mean, are they good with that because they're in another sketch, or is it just annoying at this point? Because there were so many people that just had one line. But this really worked for me, and I believe this tied a record for cast members in a sketch, right? With a school board meeting from the first episode of the season.
I do believe so. Yeah, that's a lot.
18 cast members. So I mean, Sarah was one of my favorites. Tearing up the bill and saying that she doesn't live on the roof, so she doesn't have to pay for the damage to it. No recognition for Jan Krang, 80's fourth time playing this nondescript nonsense, who did have one of
probably
the
least memorable 80 Brian character,
without a doubt,
character ever. Yeah.
I did like her line about the teenagers gathering outside and doing 69ers, but other than that, yeah, I mean, this was mostly enjoyable, harmless fun. Went a little long, but yeah, I liked it.
Okay. Rebecca, was there, any of the characters that we saw in the tenant meeting that really stood out to you?
I thought it was Matt. It was fine. Got some screen time for people that weren't in a lot of the rest of the episode. I do love Sarah Sherman. I do want to see something else from her because I do follow her content prior to this, and I understand that the Sarah Sherman character that she plays, which is essentially herself, like her saying like this just in again, I'm like, show a little more, because like I do fear that her like character's playing out a little too much. And that was the biggest standout of the whole scene. I literally don't even remember half of it because it was so much happening, but some good one-liners in there. Kate McKinnon always makes me laugh.
For sure. I think that for me, it's definitely Willem Dafoe. I really liked what we got from him in this one. And I brought this up on social media today, Bill. I'm sure you saw it. But the comparison between Willem Dafoe's, Chet Fillmore, and the grumpy old man, where Willem says this, he says,
And we liked it.
And we liked it. Did you think of that on Saturday or no?
Instantaneously, I thought of it because I still use that in my regular life when I'm telling my daughter about, walking to school 7 miles in the snow each way. And we liked it. Yeah, that was, I don't know if he's related, but he certainly pulled off the same vibe.
Yeah, that was my big question to the writers of the sketch, Mike Eastreeter and Allison Gates. I would like to know, is Chet Fillmore related to Grumpy Old Man? Would love to know that. Okay, Rob, what was your favorite character that you saw and really thoughts on the tenant meeting?
Chris Redd as the poor doorman who's everyone keeps getting his name wrong. I thought that was a perfect Chris Redd character for him to come in and just be flustered.
Should we call you Jamarcus Finn?
Yeah, go for it. I've been looking for a nickname. I like it. It was good. The sketch itself, wasn't my favorite by any stretch, but I really like Chris Redd, and I like him in just about everything.
For sure. Have to bring up, of course, another edition of the great Andrew Dismuke's one-liner.
Douche.
So great. That was really amazing. And then also one thing that we got was Alex Moffat saying
it's going straight in the trash.
And I had to think of it's going right in the trash from the premiere that we got. So that was good. But really not a lot for me here. I do wonder if putting these up top is the right place for them. I would have to think that somewhere down the line, somebody at Saturday Night Live saw the stat that we put out last week about the Will Forte episode, which was that this was the first episode since the second episode of the series to not have any cast member be in more than 2 roles. And they were like, we're getting everybody in here. Obviously, no Cecily Strong, no Cecily Strong, Colin Jost, or Michael Che in this one. But really, everybody was in there. So really just setting up the show. Okay, Rebecca, any other sketch or moment that you want to make sure we talk about?
Yeah, I think the last sketch of the episode with the temp, the episode started so strong, the sketch started so strong, and then kind of like went down, but I could not stop like hysterically laughing when like the boss left and they started like tapping and then freaking out, and Heidi was just like killing me during that sketch. Like I thought it was really funny, and then necessarily think it was necessary to have him like throw a chair out the window again. I thought it would have been kind of good to end it, but I don't know why it really just hit me so hard when they just like casually started breaking onto a song, and then like it just escalated so quickly after that.
Oh, there's rare moments, Rob, where I say I have to send a sketch to everybody I know, and this was
That's
one
what
of
I
them.
did. I did
Yeah,
also. I was texting my friends.
Yeah, I was like, I have to get this to them before they see it themselves, because then it's not funny anymore. But if they see this first, there's a lot of potential here. So, Rob, what were your thoughts on the Office song?
Yeah, I had no idea where they were going to go with it. It was, maybe it's just the way that Willem Dafoe talks, but like I mentioned before, it felt like he was kind of like stumbling over his words, which obviously he's not a cast member, so that's completely fine if he does that. And I ended up focusing on that probably more than I should have. But I do like, what was it that Heidi said, like skibba or something along those lines, whatever it was.
Well, I thought you were gonna say this, Rob. Which was this?
What were you gonna do? Throw another chair every 8 bars?
Which was an amazing line.
So she was terrific and classic, but yeah, was a fan of it. Just at that tiny little thing that I noticed and kind of took me out of it.
For sure. I actually think that him talking over his words was intentional. Maybe I'm wrong, but I really feel like that maybe played into the temporal where he was like nervous and whatever. So that I think could potentially have been part of it.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, only thing I didn't get from this was why the 24 pizzas, but otherwise everything to hear was perfect for me.
I felt like the pizzas were supposed to be a misdirection, because my first thought when they start singing was something was going to happen with the pizzas, whether he was going to, throw them at somebody or start eating. I don't know. But yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense. I'll say this is probably my favorite ever 3 minutes to one sketch on Saturday Night Live.
Wow. That is huge praise.
Well, no, because it's the first one.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you guys touched on this a little bit on Saturday, but my God, when they came back from commercial and started showing another sketch, I'm like, really? Do we have time for this? I felt like a producer of the show. Like, what are we doing? But yeah, they got it in, and it didn't feel too rushed. Probably it did cut a little bit out of it, but yeah, it worked for me mostly. Great 10-1 late Willem Dafoe sketch for sure.
For sure. And I think in the context of watching it live, that's what I said, Bill, on Saturday. I said I was worried we were going to get Gilda and Steve, where it was going to be one of those things where the sketch was going to get cut off and we were never going to get to see what the end of the sketch was, which is something that happened famously in the 70s with Steve Martin and Gilda Radner. And they went on the Good Nights and they said, oh, we're going to do this sketch next time. And they never did it. So yeah, that to me, I was a little bit distracting, but on its own, one of the best sketches of the season by far for me, and really my favorite 10-1. So loved every single minute of this. Okay, Rob, anything else from the episode you want to make sure we cover?
I think that does a lot in this episode, a lot of solid sketches, but that covers just about everything that I wanted to talk about. Okay, cool. Yeah, so just really a very interesting episode. Like I said, very up and down. First half weaker for me. There were a couple things I did enjoy. I'll say dog show, this part.
Pigeon is a sexual predator.
Didn't mind that. Of course, we got a lot of penis talk. So
weird little penis
about the dog that was stuck out there. So I did want to mention dog show. So anyone got anything from that one that you enjoyed, or?
I'd actually forgotten about that. I really liked and of course, I think the cuter the dog and the more horrible the description, the funnier it is as the two are colliding. And of course, they have this like adorable beagle running on stage. It's like, oh, this is a sexual predator. That I laughed out loud at that. That was well done.
Yeah, I think there was room for them to do some Martha Stewart, Snoop Dogg stuff, because they are hosting they hosted the Puppy Bowl. So I thought there could have been something there to make the sketch make a little more sense. I mean, it was funny. It was a harmless sketch, but I did think that there was room for good Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg, which they're never not funny together.
For sure.
Yeah, I did like the Luna fears that they put up, the pineapples and the Netflix startup sound, but this mostly was a miss for me, dog.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I would say that the one line I did like is that Luna is afraid of Spanish. So, I thought there was something here a little bit, but didn't totally work. Then there was a lot of talk about Good Morning Columbus. That was one of the sketches that I think we've seen obviously a couple times before. We talked about Danny Bang's Animals from season 42 and Invest Twins from season, I think it was 44. So we haven't seen this in a couple of years, but different variations of Mikey Day Streeter sketch that over time that I think people are a little bit tired of. But I did think that there were some good lines, and Willem was really game in this one when he was like,
It's okay to suck. It's how we learn.
just continuing the raunchy theme of the night. And of course, Andrew Dismuke's king of the one-liners says,
Now let's let this play out.
love that we got to see from that one. Anyone with a comment on Good Morning Columbus before we move on? Okay. All right. So let's wrap up January. So very weird January. Obviously, we came back from the new year. We talked about, we'd heard that Ariana DeBose was going to host, one of the lesser known names of, in recent SNL hostery. But I think that, she ended up being very, very game. And it was a little bit more, obviously theater based episode. Will Forte then came in and, people were just thrilled to have Will Forte on the show. We ended up having one of the more structurally weird episodes in the history of the show. And then obviously everything we saw from Willem Dafoe this week, where, a guy we've been waiting for a long time and getting a very sexual episode from a very game host. So Bill, can you wrap up January? What did you see from these 3 episodes that you enjoyed or took away from?
I feel like the fear of Kate overtaking the show has been dampened down quite a bit. She was in 3 or 4 sketches this week, but she's not dominating. She's not taking things away from people. It was an interesting 3 episodes, as you said. I mean, they couldn't be more different from each other. The newbie, the alum, and this seasoned veteran actor coming on for the first time. So I enjoyed all 3 episodes, and it makes me really hopeful for the back end of the season.
For sure. Rebecca, thoughts on the 3 that we saw in January?
Yeah, I mean, they were all pretty solid episodes. And Bill makes a good point it was good to just kind of separate who the host was and switch that up a little. And because there is a lot of room for different types of sketches and comedy with whatever type of person, whether it's Ariana or Will Forte. So I think it's a good mix of people. And I hope we see this come from here on out, where it is. Also, the musical guests have been kind of mixed too. So like Mona Skin and then Katy Perry, like having someone really well known and then having someone who's like newer to the scene. So, I mean, they've done a good job of picking hosts and musical guests this month.
Okay. And Rob, sum up January for us.
I think this a complaint that I've heard in the past and recently, I think, and you know better than I would, John, about the size of the cast being too large and just kind of too many performers. I had never really felt that until these past 3 episodes for some reason. For the first time, I kept seeing like there would be someone that would pop up, 45 minutes in, and I'd be like, oh my God, I forgot you were on the cast as well. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It was just odd that it's never really struck me until these past 3 episodes. I think especially in this most recent one, maybe because there was that sketch that had everyone in it at the tenants meeting. So we'll see how things are going to shape out for the rest of the year. I can't even imagine what it would have been like if you had also added Cecily into the mix. And, if Jost and Michael Che were to go on the show, and then considering that like the Please Don't Destroy guys aren't on the cast, but show up in nearly every single episode. So it's just a lot of people, not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that I noticed and felt for the first time in this recent clump of episodes.
For sure. And I will say that for me, I felt like, again, the season was on such a high, one of the greatest runs we've had in years at the beginning, where we went from Rami Malek to Jason Sudeikis to Kieran Culkin. And I really felt like somewhere down the line, we lost the thread of what was making season 47 work really well. Billie Eilish was an okay episode of the show. I'm not going to say it was bad, but really between that, between Jonathan Majors and Simu Liu being okay, and then onto the COVID stuff, I was very concerned for what we were going to see in January. I was wondering if we were going to get back on the right track with things. And I really felt like every single week in January, it's gotten a little bit better. and we're building back to a point where we're starting to get back to some of the things that I enjoyed earlier in the season. So I think that we did hit a lull, and I think we're going to come back to it, because I genuinely think the back half of this Dafoe episode was probably the best stuff that I've seen on the show since Kieran Culkin's episode. So it makes me excited for what we're going to get in on the back nine that we're going to get for the rest of the season. Bill, we did ask our Instagram audience. We said, which of these 3 episodes did you enjoy the most? Can I get your guess as to what the Instagram and Twitter audiences said?
I'm going to guess Forte.
Okay. Rebecca, what about you?
That's my guess also.
All right. Rob?
I hate to be boring, but that's my guess too.
Okay. All right. So yeah, maybe it was a little bit of a giveaway, but we did have, let me just see if I can bring that up one more time. Sorry, guys. Give me one moment. Favorite January 2022 episode. If I can't get that up on screen, I'll read that out for all of you. There you go. Got it. Okay. Apologies for those watching live. Okay, so we have our favorite January 2022 SNL episode, and y'all are right. The Will Forte episode was at 43.86%, coming in first place. Willem Dafoe came in second place, narrowly over Ariana DeBose. With Willem Dafoe was 29.56%. Ariana DeBose was 26.58%. I'll bring up some notes from Nicole, who does these polls. And Nicole said DeBose was only slightly lower than Dafoe on Instagram. His episode had a much bigger lead on Twitter than it did on Instagram. So interesting to compare those audiences and see, what type of demographics prefer each episode. Forte was about the same percentage-wise on both. So yeah, these polls, especially the ones on Twitter, are still up for many days. These are the polls as of tonight at 8 p.m. So you can still vote on your January 2022 SNL episode, and we'll obviously talk about this on the Patreon feedback show. Okay. Let's talk MVPs from the episode, and I'm going to ask you all for your top 3 MVPs that you saw, and then we'll read out the results from the audience. So, Bill, I'll start with you. Top 3 MVPs.
This is really hard since it was so split with the cast, but I'm going to go with Keenan number 1, Willem 2, and Heidi 3.
Keenan, Willem, and then Heidi. Rebecca, what about you?
I'm going to go with Willem 1, Mikey Day 2, and Heidi 3.
Okay, Willem, Mikey, and then who was your third?
Heidi.
Heidi, got it. Okay, and Rob, what about you?
I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but Willem 3, Peyton Manning 2, the kid from the Please Don't Destroy sketch, number 1.
Yeah, you are definitely allowed to do that. All right, let's bring up the results that we got from our Instagram and Twitter audiences. Everybody, you can always vote in these polls. They are available Mondays before our roundtable, so you can contribute to the conversation. All right. Well, good job, Rob. You brought up Peyton Manning, who came in first place at 29.58%. He came in and really, said that he showed why he should be hosting the show again. So great job, Peyton Manning. Willem Dafoe comes in at number 2, our host, at 23.94%. And Nicole said that Willem is far above average for any host this season that we got in the MVP voting. So Peyton didn't even take away from the fact that Willem has gotten more votes as a host for MVP than anything else. And this is a second time all season that we've had a cameo get the number 1 spot. Tina Fey obviously got it for the Paul Rudd episode, but Peyton beat her about 4%. Okay, coming in third place is Bowen Yang at 7.04%, A.D. Bryant at 5.63%, and Punky Johnson showing up for the first time in a while at 4.23%. So no Keenan on this list, no Heidi on this list, no Mikey on this list. So if some of the guesses are a little off here, but I would definitely say that for me, I think Keenan definitely deserves to be here. I think Keenan was in the most sketches that we got in this particular episode. Just looking at the sketch list right now, yeah, Keenan was in 6 sketches. Mikey was in 5 in a voiceover. So they definitely contributed the most this episode. I also want to say, like I said on Saturday, big congratulations to Michael Che, who does pass Seth Meyers in this episode to become the second longest tenured Weekend Update anchor in the history of Saturday Night Live. So great job, Che, for continuing the momentum of being a great Weekend Update anchor. And now it's time to turn our heads to what is going to be happening post-Olympics. So I'm going to ask our panel their thoughts on John Mulaney coming in for the 5th season in a row. This is something we haven't seen in a very long time. You have to go back to the days of originally in the 70s. We had Buck Henry host many times, twice a season. We had Steve Martin even host 3 times a season. And then in the early 90s, you had people like Alec Baldwin and John Goodman host many seasons in a row. So let alone people like Tom Hanks and stuff like that. So Bill, over to you. Thoughts on John Mulaney coming in and joining the Five Timers Club?
History. I mean, this is the first time, the quickest to 5 since Buck Henry, I believe, is
exactly
amazing and well deserved. One of my favorite hosts over the last 5 to 10 years. Actually going to see him live as he restarts his tour on March 11th. So that'll be a nice aperitif to watch him host and then go watch him live. So I think he'll kill it. Hope there's a Broadway theme going through it, as has been the last 3 or 4 times, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, Rebecca, I'm so fascinated for what we're going to get to see from Mulaney, because this has happened so quickly over the last 5 years or 4 years to have him on the show so many times. But I don't think anything, between all the hosting gigs, I don't think that anything more has happened to him between host number 4 and host number 5. So this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, now it's such a John Mulaney pop culture centered time. So I'm really excited to see how they're going to incorporate that into sketches. And obviously his monologue is going to be long, is my bet, because there is just so much that's been happening with him, and you're seeing his name in the news. And I know he's always been a big celebrity, but I don't think he's ever been so tabloidy until in between hosting number 4 and 5. So I'm so excited. When I saw that, I was just so excited. And then also just from a pop culture standpoint, it's going to be wild.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I mean, just having a former writer have this type of recognition on the show is just so cool. Obviously, we had a lot of famous writers in the past, but just to have one end up in the Five Timers Club, very cool, Rob. So thoughts on John Mulaney coming in?
Yeah, it's since the last time he hosted, it's been when he went to rehab, he got divorced, dated Olivia Munn, had a baby, and I was going to say that's it, but that's a crazy, and that's in the middle of COVID. So just insane. And he's has been my favorite comedian for years, and still continues to be. Hopefully, Bill. I saw him live a few months ago, and his stand-up was just hysterical. I can't wait for this. Just like any of the other times that he's hosted, his monologue is just 10 minutes of free stand-up, where I'm just I'm not going to go back and watch your stand-ups again. I'm going to go back and watch your SNL monologue instead. So I can't wait for it. I'm sure he can't wait for it too. It's going to be a very different guy, I think, than we saw. Was it October 2020 when he last hosted?
I believe he hosted episode number 5, which I believe was the 5th out of 6 in a row to start last season.
Right.
Yeah. So it's been it feels like it's been a little bit, but I mean, compared to other hosts that come back, I mean, it's not. So
it's true.
I will ask one thing before we move on, which is a lot of people have felt that his first hosting gig was one of the best in a long, long time, but that there's been diminishing returns every single time he's come back and hosted. Bill, is there anything that you would like to see from John Mulaney this time that maybe we haven't been getting in, John Mulaney 2, 3, and 4?
I don't think you can hold 4 against him too much, especially now in hindsight, knowing where his mind was. I mean, he went into rehab, a week or 2 later? I mean, it wasn't very long. And where the world was at, I mean, there was still no audience. There was still nobody there to kind of bounce the jokes off of. So it'll be interesting to see as long as he does a Broadway sketch and his monologue, there's no diminishing returns for me.
For sure. And, another piece of news, obviously, that he had between 4 and 5 and had a big lot to do with what has happened to him is he was working for Late Night with Seth Meyers. I mean, Seth ended up hiring to bring him on a show. So interesting to see if there was any creativity that sparked from working with Seth and with the people on a show that could potentially go into this next episode of Saturday Night Live. So very exciting stuff. Any other John Mulaney talk we want to have before we move on? All right, so let's talk about what's coming up here on the SNL Network. So like I said, just a really fun hot take show and an amazing roundtable with our panel here. And if you haven't checked it out and you're watching us live, head back to the beginning, watch us talk through all of these sketches that we saw on Saturday night, and then join us on a Wednesday night for Casey Killingsworth and Benjamin Lamb, two of our patrons who are going to join us on the Patron Feedback Show. They want to talk some SNL, so they're coming back on the Patron Feedback Show to answer your SNL questions. We will put out our question form on Twitter and in our Instagram stories Tuesday afternoon. So you go and you check that out and you ask us any SNL question, and we're going to talk about it on the Patron Feedback Show. We're also going to talk through SNL social media. So there's a lot of fun stuff to talk through there. That show will be starting a little bit later than usual. That'll be at 10 p.m. Eastern. So if you're a late night person and you want to catch one of our shows, or maybe you're on the West Coast or something like that, you could definitely join us live for that on Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. And then a little bit of a break, no hot take show next week. So John gets to relax on Saturday night a little bit differently. So looking forward to a little bit of a break, but I will be back on next Monday for our By the Numbers show. I'll be with Mike Murray and Nicole Rovine. We're going to talk through these 3 episodes, all the numbers that we saw in these 3, especially with the Will Forte episode, being so unique. How does that affect the statistics for the season? I believe we're also going to have a very special interview that will be associated with that By the Numbers show. So TBD on that. I'm looking forward to telling all of our listeners about that interview that we're going to get to do on Monday. Okay. Bill, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to chat with you. It's, we had a lot of fun on our 100th show a couple of weeks ago, and it's great to have you back on the show with us. So where can the listeners reach out to you?
Always great to be here. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at BKLove73 and RIP Howard Hessman.
Yes. Actually, Bill, I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up. Thank you for doing that. Howard Hessman, 3-time SNL host. Anything you want to say about his hosting gigs on Saturday Night Live?
Oh, he was the reason I wanted to be a DJ back in the 80s. He was amazing as Johnny Fever, and then of course he did Head of the Class, and he was such a big part of the original cast. He was a good friend to the show, and one of the rare occurrences where they were hosts on Lorne and Ebersol episodes. So great comedic shows. Go back and watch them on Peacock.
For sure. And Lorraine Newman posted on Twitter how much she loved Howard Hessman. So just obviously a great friend of a lot of the people who were in the cast at those times. So thanks for bringing that up, Bill. Rebecca, thank you for joining us. Always great to catch up with you and get to hear your opinions on SNL a little bit more. Obviously we get to hear you every single week on Hollywood Dish when there's an SNL episode, but fun to break down the episode with you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, tune in if you want to hear me more with Nicole and I hosting Hollywood Dish the Thursdays before each SNL episode. And you can find me on any social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, @ReBarbecue.
For sure. Rebecca, should you and Nicole add a new segment on Hollywood Dish called In or Out?
Maybe, yeah. It's a good idea.
Okay. All right. I look forward to hearing it. And joining us, so great to get to always hear from Robert J. Finn, who does incredible work at the Saturday Night Project. So if you haven't heard about this before, Rob, please tell the listeners what you have done over there and where they could reach out to you.
Yeah, SaturdayNightProject.com is labor of love that started about like a year and a half ago. It's index of everyone who's ever auditioned for the show that I've collected thus far, whether they got on the cast or did not get on the cast. So there's a lot of famous people who auditioned for the show but never made it. And this is an attempt to kind of make it into a catalog. There's a new version of the site that's coming out soon, so stay tuned for that. And you can follow me on Instagram at Robert J. Finn. And thanks for having me, John. Always a pleasure.
Of course, buddy. Great to get to talk to you. All right. So if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at Jon Schneider 24. Always love to talk to the listeners. And it's really, if you ever wanted to talk to John and talk about SNL, now is a great time to do it. Being this Olympic break, I have some time to talk to people and get their thoughts on the show. And if you ever wanted to talk to me on a podcast, you can do that. Patreon.com/the SNL Network. It's one of the great perks of becoming a patron of the SNL Network. We get to have these talks on our patron feedback shows and break down the episodes. So if you enjoy what Bill, Rebecca, and Rob are saying, or maybe you have different opinions, definitely check us out at patreon.com. Please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of the podcatchers, to check out all of our shows and never miss anything that we are putting out, as we put out multiple shows a week. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok at the SNL Network. Always appreciate everybody following our content and engaging with us as we continue to get better and better at communicating with the SNL community. Okay, for Bill, Rebecca, and Rob, and everybody in the chat who joins us on these Monday night shows, I so appreciate all of you. We will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.